Hello everyone and welcome back to Carvenus 14. Now today we are going to be asking ourselves the age-old question. C1 Arlecchino versus R1 Arlecchino. Now obviously I can't exactly do a damage comparison because my Arlecchino is not C1, she's C3.
Something
so it wouldn't really be that fair to do an actual comparison between a C1 and R1. Probably should have done a video on that before I actually activated her C1 and well, yeah. That would have been better, but we're going to talk about it in theory, guys. So, as you all know from the last video, we did a team's guide showcasing which of Arlecchino's which characters work really well with Arlecchino and which ones won't work so well. So, yeah, hopefully you guys have a decent idea on which team to form as well as which artifact set to go, and are also on basically 100% when it comes to pulling for Arlecchino. But now you have Arlecchino, but you still have some Primo Gems left over. What do you do? Like any good simp would, you pay money to the Queen. And of course, that means either getting her an extra star within her constellations, or getting her weapon so she can deal damage. Now, the question is, which one do you go for? Constellation 1 or Refinement 1 on Arlecchino's polearm, right? Now, let's talk about Arlecchino's weapon first of all. So, Arlecchino's weapon's base stats at level 90 is 674 base attack with 22.1% crit rate. Pretty good stats for an attack scaling damage dealer. Now, Ashen Sun's Shadow. Not only does the name sound absolutely metal, but it also has an amazing passive for Arlecchino specifically. Now, what it does is it grants 25% of Bond of Life equal to... yeah, 25% of your max HP is given to you as Bond of Life, basically, whenever you do a charge attack to an opponent. Yeah. So, basically, it's really good on Arlecchino because she wants to charge attack opponents anyway to grab Bond of Life already. So, that's just, you know, even more Bond of Life that she can get. So, her Bond of Life actually shoots up from 145% from her elemental skill. Normally, it would be a max of 145%, right? Yeah. Well, now, on top of the 145%, you get 170% because, you know, 145 plus 25 is 170. Not only does this increase the damage that Arlecchino will be doing, right, because you have more Bond of Life, but it will also increase the field time of Arlecchino as well, meaning she can deal more damage over time. Right? Because she has more Bond of Life, there's more Bond of Life for her to run through before she runs out, right? So, yeah, just longer field time, more damage, and higher damage. So, yeah, it's ultimately just a really, really nice weapon for her in that regard. And also, on top of that, if anyone has this weapon with, you know, less than 30% of their max health as Bond of Life, you gain 12%. But for Arlecchino, obviously, that doesn't matter. She wants to be above 30%. So on top of having Bond of Life, if your Bond of Life is above 30%, which with Arlecchino you will be all of the time, you get an additional 24%. So if you do the math, 24 plus 36... sorry, 24 plus 12 equals 36. So, if you guys remember, Arlecchino's passive, this one, the Bill Moon Alone Main No, right? Arlecchino gains 40% pyro damage bonus whenever she's in combat, right? And on top of that, 40% that she gets, her weapon gives her 36% whenever she does a charge attack to an opponent and gains Bond of Life, which obviously she will. So, this is insane, because 36 plus 40 is 76% pyro damage bonus. This is without any other modifications, right? So, no C6 Bennett modification, no C6 Zhang Ling, no C6 Sucrose. It's just not even any artifact set or any, you know, a pyro damage bonus goblet. Just 76% from this weapon and Arlecchino alone, right? That's pretty damn insane, honestly. And it actually makes building Arlecchino even easier, because with this weapon, you wouldn't really want to grab a pyro damage bonus goblet, simply because you'd already be overcapping, right? I mean, 76 plus 46 is 122. 122, if I am doing the maths correctly. So, yeah, 122% pyro damage bonus is you're already overcapping on it, which is not necessary. I mean, yes, more damage, but diminishing returns. So you're actually going to, you're going to find out that attack percent, if you had the exact same substats, like crit rate and crit damage was the exact same, attack percent would be better in this scenario. So one good thing about this weapon is that it does make Arlecchino building easier, because getting an attack percent goblet with the correct substats is easier to do than getting pyro damage bonus with the correct substats as well, right? Yeah. And, sources of pyro damage bonus are far and wide, right? As well as attack bonus. But like I said, you can really go either or. You can go pyro damage bonus or attack percent. But personally, I find attack percent to be better because not only do you, it's more consistent than pyro damage bonus because there's lower chances of you overcapping, but it also does give Arlecchino more resistances with her passive here. Yeah, with this passive. It not only gives her more damage, or the same amount of damage, but it also increases her tankiness as well. So that's why I prefer attack percentage compared to pyro damage bonus. But you can never really go wrong with either or, it just depends on your actual substat splits. Or splits on your main stats, I should say. But anyway, that's effectively what this weapon does. Alright, guys? Basically, TLDR of this weapon, it gives you more Bond of Life and also increases your damage bonus, your pyro damage bonus, when you're in combat. That's the two things that it mainly does. Now, Arlecchino C1, what does Arlecchino C1 do? Arlecchino C1 is known to be one of the strongest C1s in the game, for DPSs at least, right? Yeah. Now, of course, when Mavuika comes out, it's going to be a little bit different, but I do still think that Arlecchino C1 is up there in terms of how powerful it really is for a DPS. Now, what does this C1 do? Well, let's go through it. Mask of Red Death, which is Arlecchino's Pyro Infusion, is further enhanced. Sorry, the value of the increase is 100%. So that is actually really strong. Basically, guys, what that means is you see this number right here, Mask of Red Death increase, 288.4% at talent level 13. Okay, but it doesn't actually say here, it's not actually including the C1. Right, the C1 doesn't actually apply to the direct damage modifier, unfortunately, so it doesn't actually get translated on paper, but in practice and in reality, this number goes up from 288.4 to 388.4. Yeah, it's not multiplied by 100%, because if it was, then it would be double, but it's actually adding it by 100%, which means you're effectively 288.4 plus 100 is 388.4. Yeah. So 388.4% at talent level 13 with, obviously, well, you need to have your C1. But at C3, that's what it is. If you want a more realistic option for C1, at talent level 10, I believe Arlecchino's Mask of Red Death modifier is like 230, I'd like to say. I think it's something like that. I honestly don't remember. But it is around 200, if I remember correctly. I think it's 230. But effectively, guys, I think, it's around 200%. So let's just say 200%. With the C1, you add on 100, you get 300%. Is this damage increase worth it? Yes. Because this is a damage multiplier increase, which means it's effectively a flat damage increase. And you all know how broken flat damage increases are. Bennett's Burst is a flat damage increase, like it's a flat attack increase to the characters in the field. Yunjin's trigger quota stacks from her Burst, that is also a flat damage increase. Shenhe's Icy Quill stacks, flat damage increase, right? So yeah, Xilonin's C2, or C4 I should say, flat damage increase. And Sitlali's C1, that is also a flat damage increase. So all of these sources of flat damage increases are really strong, right? Yeah. Because this basically buffs Arlecchino's damage at the base multiplier, right? So these multipliers are very early in the damage calculation. You've got the base numbers, then they go through the normal attack multipliers, right? So because it's very early on in the the damage calculation, this is actually very good because it's effectively boosting Arlecchino's damage at the base level, right? Yeah, it's getting the base numbers that Arlecchino has and multiplying them by an even higher multiplier than before. So, yeah, this this constellation alone, in my opinion, makes Arlecchino C1 more worth it than her R1. But that could be the end of the video. I could honestly just say that and end it there, but there is something else that the weapon does have compared to the C1 that Arlecchino is only exclusive to, right? Arlecchino is only exclusive to this perk, right? Yeah. So on top of Arlecchino C1, you also get increased resistance to interruption, right? Yeah. You have interruption resistance whenever you're normal or charged attacking, but this is only when your Pyro Infusion or your Mask of Red Death state is active. When it goes away, you don't have that resistance to interruption anymore. Now, this is a really good quality of life passive that Arlecchino just has now, right? Will you need a shielder? Yes, you will, because this doesn't decrease the damage that Arlecchino takes. It actually just decreases the stagger or the knockback that Arlecchino is going to receive. So basically, I've actually tested this, and this effectively makes Arlecchino basically unable to be knocked around by small or light, medium, and even some heavy attacks. There are certain heavy attacks that will actually knock Arlecchino out, but it's actually quite difficult to do so, right? Yeah, like Ruin Graders and Ruin Hunters are like basically the Ruin machines, right? You know, those big brown things. So like, you know, the Ruin Drakes, the Ruin, you know, Hunters and the Ruin machines, some of them, as well as the Ruin Hunters, right? The ones in the sky. As far as I can tell, those are the only few enemies that can really knock Arlecchino out, right? Like, they can really knock her away or push her back, stagger her, basically. There might be some other enemies, like world bosses and weekly bosses, that also have the same effects, but I haven't properly tested them yet, so yeah, but let's just assume that, you know, world bosses and weekly bosses can do that. But of course, not all of their attacks, right? It will only be the heavy attacks, right? Yeah, so Arlecchino basically becomes immovable to effectively 70 to 80% of attacks in the game from this one passive alone, which is really, really nice because it's really good quality of life. Of course, the drawback is that you won't be able to tell that Arlecchino is taking damage. So if you don't have a shielder, you might think that Arlecchino is still healthy because she doesn't seem to be moving, you know, she doesn't seem to be moving back. You're fine. It gives you the comfort of having a shielder, except it doesn't actually replace the role of a shielder. So do you still want to run a shielder on your team with this build? With this C1, I should say, you still do, definitely, because, you know, if you're going to be taking, you will be taking a lot of damage in Spiral Abyss and endgame content and things like that, so a shielder still is quite necessary, in my opinion, to Arlecchino teams. Or if you're just really good at dodging, this will help alleviate your pain a lot more. So it's a really nice quality of life boost, as well as a good damage boost. Now, there are other things to take into account with this, okay? Arlecchino C1, had this been before 5.0, I would have comfortably said, just go for her C1. Easily. There is no competition between the two. Her C1 is just a lot easier to obtain, right? And Arlecchino's weapon, one bad thing about Arlecchino's weapon is that it's not really universal. Arlecchino's really the only one that can use this, right? Unless you want to do like a Bond of Life build on other characters, which isn't really recommended. So, yeah, but it works on Arlecchino because her damage scales directly off of Bond of Life, and she can't get rid of her Bond of Life through healing either, so it works really well on her. But other characters don't really have that exclusivity that Arlecchino does. So, yeah. The bad things about pulling for Arlecchino's weapon, well, number one, it's exclusive to Arlecchino. Alright? Yeah. Is there anything else? Well, that's about it, really. It's only exclusive to Arlecchino. Yeah, there isn't really anything else bad about Arlecchino's weapon, right? But one thing about Arlecchino's weapon that she does have access to. Right. Now, for those of you all that know about Arlecchino's weapon, alright, we're going to take a look at the side profile here. You'd see that Arlecchino's weapon is just a polearm, right? It is just a stick. It's quite literally just a stick. Until it's not a stick anymore, right? Yeah, Arlecchino can turn her polearm into a flipping scythe, and I'm going to be honest, I would not for the life of me have pulled for this weapon before 5.0 unless it had a really cool aesthetic to Arlecchino. And to be fair, yes, it does match Arlecchino's aesthetic, but you know what else matches Arlecchino in aesthetic? Staff of Homer, right? Staff of Homer fits perfectly well as well. But you know what Staff of Homer doesn't do? Turn into a scythe. Instead, it has the gold accent around it. Yeah, it has the gold accent around it, and it goes away as soon as Arlecchino puts the weapon back, right? So, is that cool compared to Arlecchino's regular scythe? No. No. I mean, Staff of Homer does actually suit Arlecchino's aesthetic quite well, right? The gold is a little bit out of place, but it gives her that premium feel, right? That premium luxury feel, if that makes any sense. So, yeah, but honestly, the only reason I would say pull for this weapon is if you're an aesthetics enjoyer and you want Arlecchino to use her scythe rather than any other weapon with the golden accents on it. Honestly, and this weapon with the flames around it as well is even cooler. I don't know where there are enemies around, to be fair. If I can... There we go. I think there might be enemies around here, but let's just find some enemies to get the pyro aesthetic on her. Where is it? There's no enemies over here. We're gonna find some enemies. There we go. We found some enemies. We found an enemy. Yeah.
Transfixed.
Right, so yeah, now look at this. Yeah, I mean, it looks so much cleaner on her actual weapon. It looks like honestly, Arlecchino's weapon just suits her aesthetic so damn well compared to, you know, any other weapon, right? It just fits so well, and that's why I personally think Arlecchino's weapon is worth pulling for. But, and I will say this huge but, okay? Alright, like, just do be careful of your own pulls. I don't want you guys to overspend on a gacha game. I mean, they are predatory. They do want you to spend money on the game. And I have not spent money on a gacha game ever since I've started playing them. Which, to be fair, Genshin was my first gacha game, and I have not spent a single coin on this game at all. I really have been full free-to-play, genuinely. So yeah, I've obviously been free-to-play for a long time. I mean, since the beginning of the game, right? And the only reason I was able to get Arlecchino to C3 and her polearm was because I saved up a lot. So yeah, and I really do like Arlecchino, if you couldn't tell. I like her lore, I like her design, I like her personality. I like her gameplay. Everything about her is really cool. Now, the end game is, do you pull for Arlecchino's weapon, or do you pull for Arlecchino's constellation? Alright? Now, this is genuinely quite difficult, because if it was down to me, honestly, I would say pull for her constellation. Easily. Right? Because Arlecchino's constellation is so much better than her, you know, than her polearm, because her polearm is great, don't get me wrong, but in terms of damage potential, right, her C1 gives so much more damage. It gives you a much bigger damage increase. In fact, you know, obviously mathematicians and damage testers for Arlecchino have actually found the difference, and Arlecchino's polearm is only it's about 10%, or about 6 to 10% better than Staff of Homer, depending on refinement ranks and stuff. Obviously, at R1, obviously, it's about, well, I would say 8% better, 8 to 10% better than Staff of Homer, right? But at R5, Arlecchino's weapon is instantly, like 20% better than Staff of Homer, right? Yeah. But Arlecchino's C1 is 25% increasing her damage by, like, it's increasing her damage by 25%, right? And that's what a lot of actual testers are saying. So it makes sense for the, you know, yeah. So which one gives you more damage? Arlecchino C1. If you want just more damage, Arlecchino C1 is by far better. So yeah, end the video right here. if you want to go and pull for Arlecchino's Constellation, but her C1 is so much better than her polearm, simply because it just gives you more damage, and it gives you more quality of life with the damage to, the resistance to interruption, right? However, if you are a fellow waifu over, a meat over meta player, right, you will pull for the polearm, simply because the scythe. Simply because of the scythe, alright? The scythe is unbeatable, it is so damn good looking, it is so unique as well, and the way that it just goes away after a while, right, and it just turns back into a polearm is so insane, right? So, this is the ultimatum of this video. If you want just increased damage and you don't care about aesthetics, go for Arlecchino C1. Or, if you have to choose between Arlecchino C1 and you like aesthetics, I would have to say, unfortunately, for those of you guys that like the polearm, but also want more damage, I would... honestly, it really depends. It's down to you, right, at the end of the day. But ultimately, if you want more damage, go for her C1. But if you're an aesthetics enjoyer and you really like Arlecchino's weapon, simply because of the fact that it can turn into a scythe and it matches her, go for her polearm. Right? Yeah. Now, I personally would never recommend going for signature weapons for characters, right? Even if they are the best in slot, simply because the weapon banner has always been a scam, right? It always has. But they did change that in 5.0, so it basically has the exact same rate up and pity as the character banner, right? Because if you look here, well, we are in patch 5.2, you see, in the character banner, normally, if you lose the 50-50 the first time, you're guaranteed the banner character the second time, right? It's the same principle here. If you lose the 50-50 the first time, you're guaranteed the weapon here. Yeah, they've actually changed it. They've basically made the weapon banner better in 5.0, so signature weapons are actually a lot more well, they are more viable to roll for now, but would I prefer pulling for them over character constellations? Character constellations, honestly, are just better in terms of damage and quality of life, right? Weapons, in my opinion, are only for aesthetics, but no, even after, you know, having some characters, different DPSs, I've never really wanted to pull for their signature weapon, simply because, you know, it's just not, well, to be fair, back in the day, the weapon banner was a lot worse. So yeah. But guys, this is the ultimatum of the video. If you want more damage, C1. If you want better, if you don't care about damage, and you're a meat over meta player, and you like aesthetics, right? Get the polearm for Arlecchino, alright? Because it turns into a scythe, it just looks cool, right? It is honestly one of the only few the only signature weapon in the game, had this been before 5.0, that I would honestly tell people to pull simply because of how cool it looks, right? Obviously with your own limits, of course, but yeah. So, yeah. C1 if you want more damage, R1 if you want Arlecchino to look as cool as possible. Alright, but that has basically been the video, guys. I have been Carvenus14 and Salam, and I hope you all enjoyed today's video. Hopefully you actually got an answer to your question of C1 versus R1. Yeah. If this video wasn't really that clear, then, well, this is just my way of presenting things. And I did make it a little bit confusing, but C1 if you want more damage, and then go for her polearm if you just want to, you know, Arlecchino to look cool. But that is basically it. At the end of the day, it is just a game, and at the end of the day, it's, you know, not really that serious if you do less damage on Arlecchino compared to someone else's, because you will have the polearm, while they might not. So, you know, like, imagine bragging to your friends, like, hey, did you get Arlecchino C1 or R1? Well, I got her polearm. Oh, well, that's pretty cringe because now she doesn't do as much damage. Yeah, well, you know what is cringe? Not having a scythe. So screw you. So, yeah. But But basically, guys, that's been the video. I have been Carvinus14 and Salam, and I hope to see you all in the next video, which will probably be the final video in this Arlecchino guide series, actually, because the next video is going to be about advanced tips and tricks that you guys can do on Arlecchino. Now, these are secrets that I've actually found over the few months of playing Arlecchino myself, and even some other YouTubers have found some tricks that I haven't myself discovered. So, yeah, there will be a video detailing all of Arlecchino's pretty cool tips and tricks that you guys may know of, and some that you may not know of. So, yeah. Now, some of these might just be for aesthetics, and some of these might genuinely be for better rotations and better DPS overall, right? So, yeah. Now, well, I guess I'll better end the video there. I will see you all very, very soon. Goodbye.